So, if you'd have told me a few years ago that I'd have leukemia, I would have had a very particular picture in my head of what I thought my life would look like. The reality of living with it, though, and CLL in particular, has actually been quite different. So today I thought I'd talk about what having CLL actually means in everyday life, work, exercise, travelling, family life, and probably the biggest part of it, what's going on in your head. So let's start with, I was feeling a little bit rough before I had the diagnosis, and then getting the diagnosis was a really kind of bonkers experience because I went into the hospital having been summoned after a blood test, and the bloods were taken because I was reporting that I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable in my stomach area, and there was no logical reason. So when I found out, I think the first thing is I was relieved that I discovered what it was, but the second thing was, and the doctors were really clear, they didn't tell me it was leukemia, they said I had CLL, and I think this is a really good way to do it because as soon as you hear the words leukemia, you think death sentence, so that really kind of helped. And this kind of leads into CLL is kind of a bonkers thing where it kind of has a strange effect on your head because yes, you're ill, but do you really know it? Probably not. It's not like you've moved quickly to a stage 4 diagnosis and you're watching people such as Chris Hoy and stuff and watching them living a healthy life. This is something that you feel, you don't feel much different, but you've got something creeping and crawling around inside you, and that's the kind of term I'd use for it. In terms of work, I've been able to carry on as normal. I'm still holding down positions. I have become much more bloody minded, and I take on challenges such as I've become a community first responder, and I'm now kind of part of the trustee team at Artemis Theatre School. So I've taken on a lot of challenges that I might not otherwise have done because I feel that life is short and you should get on with them. But in terms of work, I've still carried on. One thing I would comment though is that I work for myself, and the concept of things like medical and health insurance have become alien to me in that world because I'm buying them for me as a person. I just can't buy them anymore, or they're prohibitively expensive. I did get a life insurance kind of quote that was north of 500 quid a month, and obviously you have to offset that against kind of what's going on. So that's a bit bonkers. With exercise, before I was diagnosed, I lived in a world where I'd started to struggle. And as I think I've said before when I've recorded, I swapped to a hybrid electric bike, and that really, really helped me kind of get on and get by with stuff. And I was really kind of grateful when I made that change because it meant I was getting out and getting company. Now I'm advancing on with my treatment. I'm actually starting to look at it slightly different, whereas I might have to actually wind down the assistance that hybrid bike's giving me. So actually there's been a really positive kind of impact from an exercise. Although I am living life to the full, so am I as lean and fit as I might be? Probably not, but I am enjoying life, so that's okay. Travel and holidays, we've actually done more immediately after my diagnosis, and I was talking to a pension advisor and he said, oh, you really ought to be putting money here. We said sod it and went to Florida on holiday, and that's maybe something that came about because we were sitting there going, there's no point in having money in the bank if you're not around to spend it. So we did kind of get out, and we are doing holidays now that we thought we might never do. I'm helping at Formula One races on a global basis as a marshal, and all of these things, I'm not being stopped. The one thing I would comment though is travel insurance has got horrendously more expensive, and as such probably quadrupled the price over what it was before even traveling with type 1 diabetes. So from that perspective, it's really, really kind of had an impact from a cost, and obviously you need to factor that into any traveling that you're doing. So yeah, really, really kind of impactful there from a price perspective, and also the fact that you're traveling with your medications, and it's more medications than I was traveling in before. In terms of a social and a family life, this is where it gets kind of, interesting. I have noticed that members of my family are much more careful about, caring for me and want to take better care of me. It's quite interesting because I don't feel like I need better care, but I'm obviously always grateful for the care that they give. So it's a really kind of difficult path to travel. I'm kind of really careful how I talk to people about it. I've always been really open about my diabetes, so I am open about this, but I am careful to make sure I explain that while I've got this condition, it's not going to stop me living life to the full, if that makes sense. And probably the bit I've been suffering with more recently than anything else is the mental side of it. And that really started when I started taking the medication. I think I was living with the condition before, and although I think, as I've said, I was winding down physically and feeling quite unwell towards the back end of last year, the medication has had quite a big impact on my mental state, and I still need to look at that properly and work out what I need to do, because I go through states and days where I'm feeling quite anxious about things. I won't let it stop me doing anything, but I feel quite anxious about things and anxious about getting on with life. I'm less worried about the appointments and test results now because the numbers aren't going up, they're actually going down in the right way. So I think from that perspective, I'm pretty cool. In terms of uncertainty around the future, that again is a really bonkers thing. I'm being bloody minded about it, and I'm basically saying I believe I can live life to the full and as long as I can. Do I actually know that? No. But am I going to let it stop me doing anything? Absolutely not. And I guess in terms of what surprised me the most, I actually feel more alive and enabled than I did before I got diagnosed. And that's a really bonkers thing to say, but there's a part of me in my head that is constantly asking me what I should be doing, how I can be achieving the best I can, what I need to do to live the best life that I can. And I didn't have that before. I had a very kind of money focused and wanting to do the best for my family, and that's really completely changed in my world since the diagnosis. So yeah, I think that has probably been the biggest thing for me, is this kind of, I want to do more than I've done before, and it's given me a kind of reins off approach to life. So that's how it's really impacted me, and how I feel about things. I'd be really interested to hear from other people who are going through this and how they're feeling about both the treatment and also kind of how they're actually getting on with the world and what they're actually doing. I'm really interested in any comments that people have got. It's a really kind of tricky balance condition to live with, and just really keen to understand, how other people are impacted by this. I'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much, and I will see you on the next one.